Welcome back. The chairman of the Nigeria Revenue Service, NRS, Zacch Adedeji, has sparked public debate following recent comments defending President Bola Tinubu's economic reforms and personal lifestyle. Adedeji argued that the removal of the petrol subsidy was necessary, saying that without the reform, Nigeria's subsidy bill could have risen to about 53 trillion naira, while the naira could have weakened to around 3,500 naira to the dollar. It described subsidy removal as one of the most important decisions taken by the administration and urged critics to explain what they would have done differently.
He also defended President Tinubu against criticism of the lifestyle of political leaders, claiming that the president walks from his residence to his office, eats once a day, and has not traveled outside Nigeria in the past 3 months. The comments have generated significant reactions online, while supporters point to increased government revenue and the fiscal gains from subsidy removal as evidence that the reforms are working. Critics argue that Nigerians should judge the administration by their cost of living, food prices, transport costs, and purchasing power, rather than the president's personal habits. We're joined this morning to analyze the administration's economic reforms, as well as the statement by the NRS chair himself. We have the Economist, Dr. Ilias Aliyu, this morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. So let's first start by talking about the backlash that the NRS chairman is receiving. Many have argued that his statement is insensitive and that it was not in his position to, in a way, whilst trying to defend the choices and policies made by President Bola Tinubu, belittle the suffering that Nigerians are going through. What are your thoughts on the statements that he made?
Right. Thank you very much. I actually listened to his conversation on the TV and his presentations. And for me, I think I quite agree with Nigerians because, if you're in government, the lens at which you are looking is as if you are living in another clime. So the presentation itself are actually shortfall of what is happening in Nigeria. And I will agree with the general public that statement appeared to be a little bit insensitive because I expect him to know better. And we can also read him that he's not a politician to the core, because if he was a politician, he would have actually managed those statements. I can tell you what he's saying is different from the reality that is facing Nigerians.
All right. Thank you very much for that thought. Now, let's get into the meat of it. Is the NRS chairman's 53 trillion naira projection for what fuel subsidy could have cost Nigeria without its removal economically correct? Because he's defended for, what would have, he's defended these policies. So do you believe his projection is correct?
Right. I quite, in as much as we want to manage the two sides, make sure that we have good economy, I quite disagree with him because if you look at Nigeria economy itself, what we have been preaching for over time, recall, it's diversification of the economy, and which they have actually done better, which I think it should have been where it should be talking from. That would have suffered more. I think that's not correct, because if you look at what happened, the decision that was took to actually change the narrative of Nigeria, especially in the issue of fuel subsidy, was in a hurry. And those things that they promised that they would have fulfilled by then, even up to now, they've not actually fulfilled it. You also see the pushing of the effect of it. It has not actually been managed as possible. So that would have much more problem. I think that's not correct, because if you look at the suffering of Nigeria, the purchasing power, the disposable income, the challenges we are actually facing, you agree with me that I think these are the worst that would have happened.
Okay, but how much has the federal government actually saved since the removal of petrol subsidies? A question every Nigerian is asking this particular government. And I don't know if you're aware, you may, as an economist, you may have an insight into how much you think the current administration may have saved. And can those savings be completely attributed to the reforms that we see?
Look at them, what they defend, they will say, haven't you seen that there is increment in what they are giving to the state government? Have you seen that before they share 700 billion, now they share about over 2 trillion? I mean, Yes, over 2 trillion. So these are the things that the narrative that we don't know actually understand. Up till now, there is no any figure attached to it year by year, month on month, day by day that have been saved through fuel subsidy. Yes, all we could see is that yes, the government make more revenue, and it's clear to all every Nigerians. You agree with me that federal government of Nigeria have made more money than every other government in this fourth republic, and we could see it from the sharing, but the translating of it into better life for Nigerians, to better welfare for Nigeria is what we have not yet to see. And I don't expect to see it, because if you look at the devaluation of naira itself, if you look at the flotation of the currency,
Well, Dr. Ilias, I'm afraid your network.
Has been eroded.
Well, we must apologize for that poor. We're not able to establish. Let's see if we can re-establish connection with Dr. Ilias, if he can come back in. Unfortunately, network is not that acceptable at this moment. But Olive, I think that key question was very, very needed. If more funds are being made, as an economist, can we find out how much has been saved, how much has been gotten? And like he responded, it's the same answers we get whenever we have economists either coming from the side of the presidency and so on. And the answers simply are, oh, we've given the state governors more money.
Yes.
And the second one, the popular one, Nelfon.
Into the life of Nigerians.
Yeah.
And every time that you say this, at the national level, it looks like it is a basic argument and a basic question. They even say that, oh, we know the next question you're going to ask is how is it translating to the cost of living, but it takes time for these reforms. And the question is, how much time will be enough time? The first administration is almost at the end of this, of its dispensation. We have a few more months to the end of the first tenure of President Bola Tinubu. If he gets voted into a second term, for a second tenure, what should Nigerians expect if he ends up winning? Because oftentimes governors and presidents are on their best behavior in the first tenure because they are trying to convince you to vote them in for a second tenure. So if you ask the Nigerian populace, will they say that the quality of their lives, their spending and purchasing power is better? Forget about the macroeconomics and all the economical statements that we make. Can this translate to quality of life? As basic a question as it sounds, it is our reality. It is the reality of Nigerians. If you go into the street, if our boss comes here today and says he's making, New Central is growing, he's making huge changes, and we can see the profit New Central is making, and we're not getting paid our salaries, or our salary has been cut short, we're not able to pay, or for years you're there's no increase, you're just stagnant, it doesn't translate to you. So when he's saying it, it's like, I can't relate. I'm not connected to what it is that you're saying, because there's a stark difference from what you're saying and what my reality is.
The Nigerian stock market paid a courtesy visit to the president, and that's a question I would love to ask our guests, hopefully if network would allow us. And they talked about how bullish and how well the stocks have done, stock market. And the president, in response, says he celebrated that news, eulogized the progress, and then went ahead to say it should be taught in schools and people should hear more about the successes that Nigeria has been able to garner, especially through the stock market. But then again, just like you, Oliver, mentioned, if you say this is growth, how is it trickling down to the average Nigerian who's walking down the streets right now? And then the remarks of the NRS chairman, who said they should mention what they can do better, that people are just talking. In other words, he was telling Mr. President. Now, remember, Olive, let me give Nigerians a context here so that we understand how very important the conversation with the NRS boss was with the president. Bear in mind that just a week ago, the country was agog with reactions, counter-reactions of the cardinals who had visited the president and
had come out to clearly
before him and tell him things are not the way you think they are. But in that conversation they had with the president, one of them decided to grant a TV interview and made it clear that it seems pretty much that maybe the president is surrounded by yes men and they do not understand how tough it is for every Nigerian. It was expected that the NRS boss would come out and also maybe inform the president that, oh, we've made progress and strides here. However, we have challenges in this area and this area. But his response was straightforward. He made it clear that the president shouldn't listen to what the people are saying, in his words, of course, interpreted in that manner. But let's see if we can have our guest, Dr. Ilias, if you're back and if you can hear us. You were answering a very key question. Like I said, every Nigerian is asking if we're doing well from the macroeconomics and we're doing well with the Nigerian exchange, just like I did mention that they got a courtesy, they paid a courtesy visit to the president. Why is it that more money is being made and the average Nigerian is not feeling it? You had mentioned one, that the presidency will say they've given more money to the governors. Two, if I may help in that regard, they will also talk about NEL Fund. Three, infrastructure. Can you expatiate more on these?
Right. So for me, I think NEL Fund that government will always come out to use to defend, it's not actually, for me, it's not actually correct, because if you analyze it critically, you see that the negative aspect of it even surpassed the positive aspect of it. Before this government came on board, we knew how much school fees are. They are around 40,000 to 100,000 naira. Tell me, which school are you going to pay 40,000 naira? Now, the cost of living has actually increased. Even for the students that you are giving NEL Fund, and how many people can actually benefit from this NEL Fund? And when you talk about infrastructure, yes, we are doing something. We expect government to actually do well in a lot of things. But if you recall that where the NRS boss is not getting it, the cost of living is very, very high. The transportation is very, very high. If you look at cost of living, very, very high. Let's use the example of Andy Bonham, who actually came to bring solutions to the economy. He cut off the VAT on electricity. He also said there's a capping on the cost of transportation. These are the things that you do to actually reduce the challenges that people are actually facing. And if you look at our transportation, anything that affects transportation affects virtually everything. It affects the supply chain. Consequently, it affects cost of living, food. And these are the problems we're actually facing. Before this government came on board, we had 700. Now it's about opening around 1,400. We also recall that same period, exchange rate, fuel price was around 190 to 200. Now it's over 1,300. These are the things government must actually come to terms with. So the cost of living is actually more difficult. Perhaps government is making more money. Why the citizens are actually suffering? You could also see that during this war between Iran, America, and Israel, as it were, government are making more money, but the citizens are actually paying more. How is this government actually pushing the effect? Remember, purchasing power is key to citizens. If you find it difficult to actually survive, it reflects virtually on everything. Because we have cost of wealth increase, because we have challenges of exchange rate, school fees have actually increased. Every livelihood has actually increased, in terms of cost. So we must bring Dr. Okojo actually said it, that you need to bring out more pushing. You have to push in much more effects for people, because the challenge is actually enormous. So I think government should do more in terms of making sure that agricultural products, food, inflation actually drop. We are always thinking about bringing down inflation, and we are actually, not minding growth. So we are undermining growth because we actually want to bring down inflation. So we must do more to actually make sure that people increase their purchasing power through a structural, approach.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for sharing these points with us. As usual, we'll also call you back to analyze the progress so far with Nigeria's economy. But we do thank you for your time. Thank you.